Hey everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Genesis Block podcast. So, Genesis Block, if you guys are here for the first time, is a podcast and newsletter analyzing crypto protocols and exploring the depths of Web3. We're here to explore the Web3 space from a fundamental angle, focusing on protocol analysis. So, we've got an investment template that we've created, and we use it to fundamentally, deeply, and critically analyze Web3 protocols. We do thematic analyses where we dive deep into Web3 themes and narratives and provide our opinion on them. And we do Web3 community interviews, as the one that we've got today here, where we interview friends, family, colleagues, and others working within the Web3 space. So, welcome to another episode. And today we're going to be doing a Web3 community interview with Aki Balogh. I'll hand it over to Aki. Aki, do you want to give a quick introduction to yourself and just an overview of your background, how you got into crypto, things like that?
Sure. Thanks for having me. Aki Balogh was born in Hungary in a smaller town called Debrecen, grew up in Boston and Michigan. I had kind of a varied background. I started coding when I was like 9 or 10, got into Perl at 13. Perl had regular expressions, so that was like the big light bulb moment for me. Did a CS degree, did a business degree, did big data like analytics consulting back in 2007, 2009, where we were using really like SQL databases and building models on it to kind of find insights. Got into the big data side of that, Hadoop and then Spark. So I was a VC at OpenView looking at big data, which turned into AI. Then I started an AI company. I led that for 8 years. We worked with some scientists and invented a way to use AI to optimize SEO, so content for SEO, for Google search. And then, many years after that, I raised money and built a company and so on. And then it came to crypto. I had actually heard about Bitcoin in 2011. I missed my, first crack at it, but that's okay. No time like the present. So I came back into it in 2019, 2020, and in a big way, and just made this my full-time focus. And so I guess part of the reason for giving you that context is and I forgot to mention, my father was a scientist. That's why we left Hungary. And so both with my AI company and with what we're doing here, I always try to find like IP, like academic IP that I can turn into a product, commercialize, find product market fit and build a business around. And so when I came to crypto, there was one more little side story I'll tell you, is that when I came to crypto, I made an introduction for a friend of mine, a guy who runs a software development firm called Dekai, these Hungarian guys, and they ended up winning the project to build a Chivo wallet for El Salvador.
Oh,
And
cool.
so, which is awesome. So there were actually two Chivo wallets. I don't know how public this is, probably public enough. The first Chivo wallet failed miserably, had a lot of challenges. And
Yep.
then these guys were brought in to like, okay, so you guys know about, so I didn't just like spill the beans on geopolitical drama. But yeah, so these guys were brought in to fix it. And they worked, day and night tirelessly. And they came out the second Chivo wallet, which had like 250,000 daily active users and 4 million cumulative users within like 2 weeks of launch. And it just like really, for me, especially coming into crypto full time at that time, it really opened my eyes that Bitcoin has crossed the chasm. It's being used by early adopters, but it's also being used by people with like little pupusa carts or whatever, just a general populace. And that for me, other than, I love Ethereum and all the chains, but it seemed like Bitcoin has like a really simple value prop that people can kind of understand and use. And so I decided to look for IP on Bitcoin. Long story short, decided to look for IP on Bitcoin. And I found this white paper that was published by the guy, the main Bitcoin thinker at MIT, this guy, Tad Strija, who co-created the Lightning Network. And right before he published the Lightning white paper, he published a DLC white paper in 2018, where he outlines this sort of smart contract type interaction on Bitcoin. And it seemed really interesting. So I started picking it up and playing it with it, and and found my co-founder Jesse around that time as well. And we started looking at it, and we realized that, wait a moment, this is actually quite powerful, because DLCs are basically escrow for Bitcoin. It's the ability to take Bitcoin, lock it in a multi-sig, but lock it in an escrow, and use it on other chains like Ethereum or any chain. And it's not a bridge, it's not a custodial, it's not a wrapped Bitcoin, it's something completely new. And we also got lucky around that time because Taproot came out and Taproot enabled these DLC features. So basically we started, long story short, we started building a company around, implementing DLCs and plugging it into different protocols and wallets and just making this DLC thing a reality.
Perfect. And no, that's super interesting. Yash, I can see you've got a question.
Well, yeah, I guess we're just gonna dive in, right? So my first question is, you said that your solution uses a multi-sig that allows Bitcoin to be used natively on other chains. Can you dive into that? What that means exactly? Because a multi-sig, as you know, it can be vulnerable to hacks, as we saw from Ronin. And how is a multi-sig more secure than like a custody solution, like something like Wrap Bitcoin?
Yep. So the biggest difference between a DLC and like a bridge is, for a bridge, you need a validator network. So you have this consensus network that is a party to the multi-sig, and you have these, these nodes are syncing, and you lock value in the nodes and they maintain state. And if someone, to your point, hacks a node, then they can drain the funds. And that's a vulnerability point. DLCs were built by design, really the math was designed by Taj to be very different. He actually, without getting too deep into it, and I'm not a crypto mathematician either, but just having read the paper a few times, he actually kind of re-engineered, well, not reverse engineered, but he kind of reconfigured how Schnorr signatures are used. And he has this entity, this off-chain entity, he called an oracle, which we now call an attester, and I can get into the details of why. But he had this off-chain entity that sort of referees the escrow, but the escrow is between two parties. It's between the user with the Bitcoin and let's say the protocol they want to plug into. Like, let's say I want to take a loan. Right now we're plugging into a platform called Arcade XYZ. It's an NFT-fi platform. So if I want to take a loan through Arcade, I can put up my Bitcoin in a 2 of 2 with a representative of Arcade side and basically lock it that way. And so, and in a DLC too, when you deposit Bitcoin, you pre-sign the conditional outcomes. There's 2 ways the money can flow in the way we're implementing. You can get repaid or you get liquidated. I mean, basically it's a redemption or liquidation. And so when I put my Bitcoin in, I pre-sign those 2 cases, and so does the other party. And from then on, there's only those 2 things. There are no other validators. The attester is involved in structuring that contract, if you will, but they are not a party to the contract in the way that we think about like a signer. It's not a 2 of 3. And I can get into like the more technical of all of this, but basically it's just an agreement between me and Arcade in this case, and the money can only move 2 ways, and there's no way for a hacker to drain the funds and send it to a third address.
So is it kind of P2P in a way where it's singular interactions between 2 defined entities and it's not an entire network interacting with another network?
That's
so
correct.
It's just secured between 2 parties, between themselves, without needing any validators to validate the transaction.
That's absolutely right. So we don't have a validator network. We don't have a token. It's not anything. And we've partnered with Chain.link, and they are, of course, a leader in building decentralized Oracle networks and using it. But we actually don't do most of the complicated stuff. We just build this into different wallets and different lending protocols. And it's not all lending, but primarily lending uses Bitcoin collateral. So posting Bitcoin collateral is sort of most useful there, or most frequently used there. And we build it in, and then you end up with these like decentralized escrows all over the place. So all over the Bitcoin chain, you'll have these decentralized escrows that are individual. And the cool thing is the way that it was designed, also in the white paper, is the attesters, although they facilitate the transaction, they structure, they don't know who the 2 parties are. So the attester layer, and we provide attesters, or people can run their own or whatever, but the attesters don't know who I am, the details of the transaction. They don't even know if there is a transaction. All the attester is doing is they're using their private key to publish numbers into like a public space. So basically, it's like, I'll give you an example. Like, let's say you and I want to escrow some funds because I'm buying some coin from you or whatever. You and I might go to a lawyer, just a random lawyer on the street, who passed the bar and is licensed, and say, hey, structure this contract for us so that it's fair legally for both parties. Cool, we get that contract, and then later the trade has happened, and the lawyer's like, all right, I attest to it, I see the trade has happened, or you sent the funds or whatever, done. And then it attests to it. The way this is implemented in software is the attester, basically, when you create the escrow, you have these two conditional outcomes. They're called CETs, but anyway, they're like contract execution, potential outcomes. And so the attester publishes a number for one and a number for the other one. Like, hey, attester, give me two numbers, 8 and 26. And so it just publishes two numbers, and the parties grab the numbers and build it into these pre-signatures. And then later, when in Arcade, let's say in Arcade, you have this ETH contract that says, oh, Aki's been liquidated, sends a signal to the attester saying, for this contract, it's a liquidation. And the attester said, all right, well, here's another number. That number is called a discrete log, but it's just a number. And then the parties grab it and use that to complete, and then it's a complete Bitcoin transaction. It just executes automatically, and the escrow is closed.
And how does the messaging work between the blockchains? Like, how does the messaging work between Bitcoin and Ethereum, for example?
Yeah, we're implementing that. That's one of the pieces that we built. There's a listener. So basically on the attesters, which the only goal of the attester is to secure the Bitcoin side. And the only thing the attesters would publish one number and then publish another number. So the attesters listen to these ETH contracts and basically just get the signal from there. So we have there's like a listener or observer layer, built alongside the attesters. But that's just it. And then they can verify on chain that was the signal. There are a lot of ways to do that. So it's just pretty much just like, it's less of a mess. It's an event that basically is translated. It's like translating an instruction from Spanish to Chinese. It's like, oh, I heard this in Spanish. In Chinese, this is the word. Okay, go for it.
Cool. No, I think that makes sense. And then just, talking about the attesters themselves, do you want to like expand a little bit more on the role that the attesters play? Who can be attesters, and what just around some of the infrastructure maybe that they may need to have. And, then I have a specific question around the attesters if that's not covered in your answer.
Yeah, and I'll give you, we're kind of in an alpha stage, so in pre-production, so this is subject to change. We're targeting production in Q3-ish, so we're not too far off. We've been developing this for over a year now, but everything I said kind of subject to change a little bit, but the attester can be anyone. So you can have one attester or you can have multiple attesters. There's some arguments as to why you might want to have just one attester, because there's like a lot more to lose and whatever. I don't know. I personally think that multi-attester is the way to go. You can have 99 out of 100. Let's say you have a pool of 10,000 attesters. You pick, the system picks 100 at random using a verifiable random, function, picks 100 at random. And, we're waiting for 99 attestations out of 100 to execute the DLC. All of this is programmable, but the attester can be anyone. So it can be, a series of, it can be funded, done by nonprofits or foundations. They can run attesters. We offer an attestation service where we just have a bunch of attesters on different node operators, and we offer that as a service. Big companies might want to run their own attesters, so they might want to have their IT team, maintain their attesters. Our argument is generally that in most cases, you want the attestation to be separate than the protocol, because you don't want, if I'm taking a loan from you, I don't want the lawyer securing the contract to work for you. It seems like collusion potentially.
That was what I was going to ask.
Yeah, so we're kind of this third party escrow, not an escrow agent, but an escrow service in a way that kind of, helps ensure, kind of safety and privacy. But anyway, but that's kind of, so there's different options. an attester, we're kind of packaging it up into like a single, node that can be deployed, but it's basically like a Docker where you have, an ETH node and a, Bitcoin node, and then you've got the attester and you've got the observer, and you can have any number of these. These are all configurable. The white paper doesn't specify kind of any best practices. In fact, the white paper called this a Bitcoin Oracle. And when we first started, and especially because we got funding from Chainlink in the beginning, we also thought we're building like another decentralized Oracle network. And then it was only later when we realized that although it's an off-chain entity to do this attestation, but we actually don't have anything really to do with the oracles directly, because the way it works, like in the case of a loan, is, let's say Bitcoin price drops, Chainlink's network picks up on the price, reports the price to the lending protocol. The lending protocol smart contract does a health score calculation, finds that you've been liquidated, then it generates the event that sends to the attesters for execution. So it's really like, we don't have to have price feeds and things. We don't have to supply price feeds. Whatever the protocol the lender chooses to, whatever lending protocol the user chooses to trust. Like if I'm taking a loan from Aave, I have chosen to trust their smart contracts and the Oracle system that they selected. And that's just all like a decision I made. And if I don't want to trust Aave, I can trust somebody else. And if I don't want to trust anyone, then I don't take a loan from an external party, then I just hold on to it, and that's fine too. So it's all kind of, the complexity is sort of behind the
abstracted away.
The abstracted away behind the smart contract that kind of sends the signal.
And from an institutional perspective, just to, summarize some of what you just said, essentially there's a choice for protocols and, to choose the attesters that they want on the Bitcoin side of things. So for example, you've got a third-party escrow service that can be used as a trusted escrow service if you're happy with past performance, things like that. Or you could introduce your own attestation service on the Bitcoin blockchain. That verifies that the funds that are being used on another blockchain are actually on the Bitcoin blockchain. Is that correct?
That's absolutely right. Yeah, absolutely right. And I can see other reasons why organizations might want to choose to run their own attester layer. And we can help obviously set that up, or we can just provide, the best documentation we can. But there could be regulatory, there could be geographic or other, political. I'm not an expert, but then we also, for the purpose of kind of maximizing performance and privacy, we also offer our solution that is a simple SaaS model. We just charge for it because there is no token, because the nodes don't need to kind of sync on state. We don't need tokens and token staking and that whole kind of thing. So it's more just like a SaaS offering where if you want to use the network, we just charge you for it.
Cool. And just one last question from me around this. So if you is there any type of like identity verification or done on done on the attesters? So for example, do they have to is there a way to prove that they're trusted, or and is there a process for onboarding an attester? And actually the second part of that would be if you want to set up your own attester, what is how technically difficult is it? Like, what are there any processes that need to be set up? Like, what is the difficulty level of setting up your own attester, and how do you do that?
It shouldn't be too hard. We have it kind of Dockerized. I don't immediately know if it's on our GitHub in a public repo, but it should be or will be if it isn't already. And or if someone wants that, ping me offline and we can share that code. But it shouldn't be too hard because it is so simple. The only important part of the attester, or the only kind of the biggest point of failure, is the private key management. So if somebody loses the private key of the attester, that's then it can't be. I mean, what are you going to do then? So then that attester or those attesters will just not be able to participate. That would be tough. So we offer some kind of guidelines and vault technology made by third parties that can help with that, help safeguard that. But otherwise, it should be fairly straightforward. Yeah, and so and from a just a implementation standpoint, today we have been just running our own attesters, but as we go into production second half of this year, that'll just we'll just we're already working with some node operators and kind of getting that out there. And so we'll have a little more specific picture of exactly what the steps are, but it should not be difficult at all.
Cool. And just on the first part of that, sorry, just on the first part of that, like, is there like who can be an attester, right? Like, are there any requirements, and is there any identity verification or anything? Like, how do you, yeah, sorry.
Yeah, right now for our service, we provide, I mean, this is all configurable by the protocol. So for example, for Arcade, they have, chosen us as the partner to implement DLCs and implement native Bitcoin through DLCs, as a partnership. So we're setting up the attestation network for them. And so we're basically just, we're just handling that. We're finding, reputable node operators that can run. Basically, the value prop of the attesters is just, or the key success factor is uptime. So just keeping the nodes running, because you just don't want the nodes to disappear. If the attesters, let's say a data center fails or server fails or something, and the attesters suddenly disappear, then the funds wouldn't disappear. Of course, they're all on Bitcoin, but the transaction would fail. So it'd go back to the lending protocol, say, hey, you want to liquidate, I just can't do that right now. Please try again later. And then when the nodes are back up with the same private keys, they can be restarted, then the transactions go through. So there isn't a loss of funds. It's just a poor user experience. So anyway, we provide that. But if a different protocol chooses not to use any of our services, of course, and they just want to build their own attesters and so on, then they can do that and just wire it that way.
Cool. Yeah, sorry, you had a question.
Yeah, so I just kind of wanted to walk through the entire transaction. So let's say I have some Bitcoin in my Bitcoin wallet, and I want to take out a stablecoin loan on my Bitcoin. So I would take that Bitcoin and I would, upload it or connect it to your network. And then, how does that proceed then?
Yep.
Who do you connect with? And then how do you take that money off Ethereum into your wallet?
Yep. So I'm glad you asked, because it's a common misconception, or it's again the first thing where people's brains go, having been using bridges. We don't have a network. So what we do is we plug. So we offer three things as a kind of a consultancy. So one is we offer a DLC signing library that's built into Bitcoin wallets. So in order to enter into a DLC, you have to use a Bitcoin wallet that supports DLC signing. And it's not, we just follow the white paper, and there's an open source DLC specification, and we have this library, but we build that into wallets. So right now we've built into a Bitcoin wallet called Xverse, and we're building into the next wallet called Hero, and we talk to a lot of Bitcoin wallets. So today you have to start with Xverse wallet, because it's the only Bitcoin wallet that uses the DLC flow and for our alpha. And we actually have a video on our Twitter that walks through this. Then you have to go to a lending protocol that supports DLC, that has the DLC integration built in. So there's two functions that need to be implemented. For example, in Solidity, it's the open DLC function and the closed DLC function. So there's a smart contract for that. And those are implemented on the lender side, and then kind of the UX is designed. So anyway, you have to take Xverse wallet, and then you have to go to Arcade, which is our alpha lending protocol. And so in Xverse, you lock Bitcoin into, and we do have a page for this. We call it our broker service. So it is a service, but candidly, we're moving that to custodians like BitGo, so that they can be the custodian if there's, and I can explain why you need that. But basically, if the NFT is traded, you need somebody to be able to send you the Bitcoin that if you burn that NFT and you're not the original person, the DLC, then yeah, you need to go to someone and get the Bitcoin. So there's a broker service there, but it doesn't have to be us doing it. But basically, you lock Bitcoin to get a bit, and so you authenticate with Xverse wallet, and you authenticate with, let's say, MetaMask, and you lock Bitcoin, and you get a Bitcoin backed NFT in your MetaMask. and then you can list that on Arcade, borrow against it. It's denominated in Bitcoin. So if you lock half a Bitcoin, then you're going to have a half Bitcoin NFT. You can borrow on it, and then they'll do their liquidation logic. And if and then if that NFT is burned, then whichever wallet address burned the NFT can redeem a half Bitcoin from the broker service.
Cool. And with regards to the integrations that you mentioned on both sides, how complex are they, and like how much time would it take to do them? How easy is it, like for example, an Aave to integrate a DLC.link integrate into into their systems, essentially into the protocol, to be able to accept these Bitcoin NFTs and things like that.
Yeah, it depends on what has been built to date. So for example, on the wallet side, if it's a Bitcoin wallet that supports Taproot and Schnorr signatures already, and I think also Bech32, which should be in there, then it should not be too difficult. We can kind of plop the library in, takes a couple of weeks, maybe less time. Really, part of it is just designing the user interface to have this section where you have locked Bitcoin, and how does the user kind of navigate that. So it can be done in a few weeks. Which is what we're doing with Hero right now, Hero Wallet. So that's fairly easy. On the protocol side, it depends on the complexity of the system. So in the case of Arcade, they're taking an NFT and they're just borrowing against it or lending against it. That's very straightforward already. They're quite literally built for that. But we are also working with CeFi, companies where it's more used to post collateral for trading ops, and there are more complex systems. And so there can be quite a bit of, implementation design. And that's really what we do as DLC.link, is we're implementation consultants, because the DLC is open source. The network can be, anybody can run the network, or we can, provide the service, but it's really not, not beholden to us as a company. So really what we do as a company is we build this into the systems and we make it work.
Cool. No, that makes sense. And in terms of scaling the system, how do you envision scaling it? Like, for example, how do you envision making the integrations more generic so you can go and plug and play, rather than requiring bespoke integrations, which adds the cost, and that might inhibit adoption.
Yep. This is why I think so. For those who, I don't know if people are familiar with Cloudera, it was a big deal when I was in big data many years ago.
Might be worth just giving a bit of an overview.
Sure. It's
Yeah.
kind of a little bit of a difference. So in the big data kind of space, when this technology called Hadoop came out and everybody was it was all the rage, there's this company Cloudera that just made it easy to use Hadoop, because Hadoop itself was open source, but it was kind of like an operating system for big data. It came with a bunch of components, and each component had to be implemented and into a company's specific infrastructure. And so Cloudera had kind of generic modules, and then they would, build it into, your particular environment. That's basically what we aim to be. We aim to be the supporting kind of open source, the company that supports the sort of open source middleware. And so as we, evolve our libraries, we'll make it easier and easier. I would say it's not particularly hard. Each individual step is not particularly hard, but there's about 5 or 6 things that have to be wired up, and it could be 12 or 15 things depending on the environment. Do they have some sort of MPC wallet, multi-user authentication thing? Do they have, are they using a blockchain, or are they using like a centralized system? I mean, there's just a lot of pieces that need to be. What is the UX? Is the wallet, does the wallet only support Bitcoin chain, or does it support multi-chain? Do you need 2 different wallets? If so, which wallets? There's just a lot of kind of usability stuff that we end up getting involved in. But that's what we aim to do, is to just, to your point, get more efficient over time and make things easier and easier. And to be fair to us, I think we've done that. A year ago, we just had prototypes. And now we have, quite a few repos on our GitHub. We have some documentation. If anything's missing, please let me know. And it's just, it just gets easier and easier over time. And then we also have kind of premium features where, for example, if you want to run a big multi-attester network, that's more of a premium offering we can help with. If it's a single attester, that's fine. A lot of what we end up doing is really just talking about DLCs and educating and just kind of, helping companies brainstorm or teams brainstorm on, what problems could be solved with DLCs. What are we seeing elsewhere? So a lot of it is just product marketing. We try to keep our blog active. We have a lot of videos on our YouTube. We try to publish a video at least once a month, but sometimes every week, just kind of visualizing it. So it's a broad, space. DLCs are just a horizontal layer. And so we're just basically popularizing the layer.
Makes sense. Cool.
Awesome. So now that we've kind of understood what you guys do, I was thinking we could take a step back and ask you some more general questions about crypto that we would, ask any of our guests. So the first one is, a very obvious one, which, there are countless debates over, but what is your take on Bitcoin versus Ethereum? Why do you, I guess, since you're working with Bitcoin, do you have a bias towards Bitcoin being the better asset? Are you neutral between both? And do you hold either or both of them as well?
Oh yeah, I hold both, and I hold other things as well. I think crypto is really interesting because it's both like computer science and cryptography and crowdfunding and gambling and trading, and it's a lot of stuff going on at the same time, and it's kind of geopolitical, independence or sovereignty. So I also have some Bitcoin miners. So I'm into the kind of self-sovereignty value of Bitcoin. But I think that Ethereum has built a tremendously powerful, cloud compute kind of system, and smart contracts and the whole kind of ecosystem around it, the L2s and so on. So I think it's quite powerful. I also have, Solana and Cosmos. I think Cosmos is really interesting, and Polkadot. And I'm kind of a multi-chain, person by nature. But I think they will, as time goes on, and it feels like it's been a long time, but it hasn't even been like 15 years. It's been actually a very short amount of time for humanity to kind of understand what these technologies mean. But I think as time goes on, they will separate a little bit. Bitcoin and the hash rate security of miners and the simplicity of Bitcoin, which is by design, but it really builds on decades of academia. So if I can think of a place to put like my digital money or digital currency, Bitcoin is a great place to put that. Is it the money that I use every day or all the time? No, because it's slow and inefficient and high gas fees usually, especially right now with all the minting on BRC20 going on, whatever. But basically, it's like my savings account. Like it's my digital savings account. And I can move funds if I need to, but I like to keep them there. And gosh, I'd love to earn a return on that while that's sitting there for decades. And then ETH is is like Amazon Web Services, a cloud computer, or whatever the analogy is. And so the applications are built on that. Can you also have applications on Bitcoin? Sure. And I'm sure there are, over the years, there are going to be more and more examples of, an application. It's a little bit of a brain twist to think of an application you would access from your savings account versus your checking account. But let's say like my credit cards pull from my checking and my investment fund plugs into savings, or I'm not sure what the analogy is, but there are kind of different flavors. So I'm excited to see ordinals, BRC20s, Bitcoin layer 2s, drive chains. I think all of that is really cool. Does it, advantage us to think of a Bitcoin only world where ETH like disappears? I don't think that makes any sense. I don't see why that would happen. Clearly, it hasn't been proven out empirically. Clearly, there's demand and smart people working on non-Bitcoin things. So I think it's a multi-chain. I think we live in a multi-chain world, whether people, love it or not. That's what it is. Do I think Bitcoin will go away, will vanish after reaching, billions or trillions in market cap, wherever it got to on the last high? I don't think it's going to disappear. People are building miners for a reason, or buying miners and building mining networks. I think it's just going to coexist, and it's kind of like, I mean, maybe this is a simple analogy, but we have like Windows and Unix. So in the 90s, we had the Windows, MS-DOS and Windows, and we had Unix, which was like Linux. Fast forward to today, I mean, Unix was like the really boring one. Like a lot of non-engineers might not even know what Unix is. But Unix today is what powers Apple, AWS, Android. Like Unix is behind everything. And then you have Microsoft Windows and Azure, which is another thing. And so I think Bitcoin over time will be more ubiquitous because it'll be kind of this invisible, really boring layer that only some, diehard engineers work on, but is quite valuable and broadly adopted. And then ETH and other chains will be more commercially focused, which is like Microsoft today.
Cool. That's a very interesting viewpoint. Yeah, and in general, like what are the facets of crypto and blockchains that excite you the most? Like what are the qualities? What exactly makes you want to wake up and go like, okay, I'm gonna, go and build DLC.link today. It's gonna be fun, and this is why I enjoy being in this space.
Yeah, one thing that's interesting that 6 months ago, I wouldn't have been able to tell you this, but I think NFTs are really exciting now, NFT-fi. So I'm into DeFi, and, because it's a really cool alternative to CeFi, we all, know that, but NFT-fi is this kind of emerging space, and I'm talking about Arcade, XYZ, or Paraspace, or, Nifty-fi, or whomever. Aave, I guess, has now an NFT thing, or they're coming out with one. The Uniswap V3 protocol enables, LP tokens, which lets people take loans on NFTs and so on, kind of from like not a pool, but something different. And so I think that's really interesting because, contracts in traditional finance are NFTs. They're not current, like when you go take a loan, you're not like taking a loan in some different currency or whatever. The loan contract is unique to you. It's got your name and your address and your, the information they gathered in due diligence. You've got your UCC lien that's also unique to you. And so NFT, it will, not so much although I value art, not so much the artistic representation of NFT, but the financial instrument representation of NFTs. NFT-fi I think is going to be a big part of what we see over the coming years.
Cool.
Yeah,
That makes a lot
definitely
of
agree
sense.
with that. I think a very interesting thing that could happen with NFT-fi is hopefully if the tokenization of real world assets continues and we start tokenizing things like real estate and contracts and other things like that as NFTs. We already have a system built out to leverage those, and that could it could make illiquid assets a lot more liquid in the future, and there would be a whole secondary economy around these assets that wouldn't exist. So it's basically creating a new pie, which is very interesting to build towards. And the only hurdle I can see towards that is regulation. So with that, what do you think about the future of crypto adoption in various countries of the world, and what would it take for crypto to get adopted at a mass level? Because currently it's still looked at as a niche technology that only few know how to use.
Yeah. I guess two main thoughts, and I'm definitely not an expert on kind of SEC and regulatory bodies and so on, but I guess in my uneducated state, one thing is you cannot stop technology. I mean, governments. There was an example years ago of you could see how much corruption is in a country by seeing how fast are they to kick Uber out. When Uber arrives in a new country, does it stay and thrive, or do they kick it out? And if so, how quickly? The quicker they kick it out, the more corruption in that country. But by and large, I mean, you cannot keep Uber or any kind of beneficial technology that's demanded by and why do people demand Uber or these technologies? Because it's much more convenient, it's safer, it's much more traceable, yada yada. We all know all the benefits of Uber. We'll apply that to crypto. I mean, this last couple of months, it seems like the US have had, and kind of understandably, I mean, we had Terra Luna, FTX, yada yada, Celsius. I mean, it's just been like a parade of bad news. So of course, the first reaction of many people, especially people who are not into crypto, is like, oh my God, this stuff is like toxic, and like, let's get rid of it. Can we get rid of it, please? But obviously there are a lot of, and our brains kind of naturally do that. Like we see the risk first before we see the opportunity. That's how, at least the ones that survived did that. So there's that, but that's, I think, a hurdle. I think once there's more kind of general knowledge, it'll become more. And then the other part is, I think it's a really great question of like, how can we make this more broadly usable? Well, we need to make this more broadly usable, because it is just, this stuff was designed by engineers, a little bit for engineers, and just the user experience. We just need better user experiences. I mean, the difference, but if I drastically simplify our value prop, the difference with implementing DLCs and working with us is kind of like, we want to enable the same use cases as bridges, except it never fails. It never gets hacked and it never blows up. And it just stands the test of time. And if there are 9 bridge companies and what we do, and we just kind of over 5 years, the other 9 blow up and we're still around, well, that would be a terrible case, because that would be not how we want things to go. But then it has stood the test of time, and just people, build it in, and it's fine. Similarly, any kind of good beneficial technology. I'm a big fan of Aave, for example, big fan of Chainlink and Pith. And, there's definitely some things that, feel like they should exist. And those, should just, we should just kind of simplify the UX, take out the, edge cases, make the wallets easier to use. I mean, the whole shtick. I personally don't think that having like a seed phrase stored somewhere, I don't think that's like crazy hard, but I guess some people think it's very hard. That's fine. I guess we could have Wells Fargo or whoever I bank with maybe store this here. I don't know. But like definitely there's some, things that need to be figured out in conjunction with the broader world we live in. But to call kind of crypto a pariah, or to look at it as like all bad or all like stupid frog coins or whatever that are, that's a drastic oversimplification of the real science and engineering that's behind this.
No, I completely agree with you on that. And like just going back to the DLC.link point, right? Like one of the questions that I wanted to ask earlier also was, there's quite a lot of demand for a product like DLC.link if it works exactly the way that you've explained it. And that's because on Ethereum, one of the biggest pain points, well, it's not a big pain point, but it is a risk, is to use wrapped versions of Bitcoin, wrapped versions of different types of assets, not being able to use them from the native chain directly and prove that they're there. In this case, also you'd be using a Bitcoin NFT, but that NFT would be a lot more, I guess, verifiable, and there would be like verifiable trust around that NFT, representing the Bitcoin that is stored on the native blockchain. So in terms of actually making sure that the benefits of the use case that you're talking about and the benefits of the product that you're talking about actually get implemented within some of the protocols that you mentioned. Like, for example, I'm a delegate on Aave, and there is quite a lot of the considerations that we have around risk parameters are to understand, okay, this is a wrap token, this is a liquid stake token. How do we adjust the risk appropriately to account for it being a wrapper? Right. So how do you actually make sure that the obvious demand that is on one side of the bridge is met? And how do you essentially plan to market it, to integrate it, to prove that that DLC.link works, and to actually to utilize it within these different types of protocols on Ethereum and other blockchains that have a pretty high need for it?
Yeah, so the Bitcoin-backed NFTs people are producing with our alpha are wrap. I would call them wrap. I just call them self-wrap, because you wrapped it. You are the custodian of the funds. Well, the multi-sig is the custodian, but you're one of the two parties. That's as close as self as you can get, I think. So that probably might be another designation, or it could be considered a real-world asset itself, which is kind of funny. Bitcoin as a real world asset, but it makes sense.
That's funny.
It's a little bit of, but that's probably the most likely designation for it. A collateralized asset that happens to be a digital asset. So there's that. I would say that the downside of implementing DLCs is they need to be implemented one by one, protocol by protocol. There isn't like one service that any, lending platform can just pull from, and, there isn't a pool, etc. So we have to go protocol by protocol and implement one by one. Right now, Arcade is the first. There's another one called Arcadico. We have a video of it. They've implemented it on a chain called Stacks. And then there are some other ones queued up for the next couple months, and it'll be a little bit more predominant. But then to your earlier point, the implementation process will be faster too as we do more of these. And then they have to also be implemented to Bitcoin wallets. So my biggest kind of wish list ask for this year is that Bitcoin wallets broadly adopt Taproot and then DLCs, whether they use our library or some other library, it doesn't matter. But Bitcoin wallets need to be able to do DLCs. In my view, it's like they need to be able to do that, and Lightning, and then ordinals and whatever. So anyway, once it's adopted in most places, or let's say the 80-20 rule, 80% of the value, like the 5 largest wallets that hold 80% of the value can do it. If you could do it in Ledger, etc. And then it's in a couple of protocols that people use frequently, and they have to be NFT-fi protocols because it's a real world asset. So, like Arcade. So once it's in a couple of places, I think it'll just kind of over the years, grow into it. But yeah, the downside is it has to be built in one by one.
But when you say the NFT-fi wallets, like, can you, NFT-fi protocols, can you borrow stable coins on those? Like, what are the types of assets? Can you only borrow NFTs?
No, you can't. So these NFT-fi, Arcade, Paraspace, Nifty-fi, I think BendDAO. There's a couple of these.
Yeah.
And so you can put in like a Bored Ape and pull out USDC or ETH or whatever, and then you can take that ETH and liquid stake it, or you can take that USDC and put it into like Goldfinch and earn a return.
Yep.
So I think the longer term vision is basically like building this as a package into Goldfinch, let's say, where like, do you want to deposit Bitcoin into Goldfinch? Today, you can only deposit stables, but if you deposit Bitcoin, then that, use this wallet here, and then that actually in the background mints an NFT, borrows against, does all that, and then boom, you're like now earning a return on your Bitcoin, but you as a user don't have to care because you just did like one action and it just works. That would be the long-term, landing place for this.
Cool. Awesome. No, I think that's a very good answer. And yeah, I think that's mostly it for me. I think we've learned a lot about DLC.link and about your experience and your journey in crypto. And honestly, what you're trying to build is very cool. If you guys pull it off, and if we get adoption at scale, I think it's a massive thing for the space, because honestly, Bitcoin is the most held asset across crypto, and people want to make sure that they can use their native Bitcoin to actually earn yield. And that's honestly one of the biggest I guess issues with Bitcoin and people understanding its value proposition, where it was like, oh, what can you actually do with it? But you can actually do things with it now, if the vision that you guys are building towards actually is pulled off. But no, kudos to you guys, and thanks for trying to innovate on such an important blockchain as Bitcoin. People need to focus on that as well. But yeah, if you want to add anything as well.
Yeah, I really like what you guys are doing. There's always that Bitcoin versus ETH debate happening, but you guys have just put that to the side, and you guys are saying Bitcoin is a valuable asset. ETH has a valuable network of dApps, so why not let them cohabitate and actually synergize and let Bitcoin, kind of come into DeFi in a much bigger way? Because there are, like Sid said, so many Bitcoin holders out there. Entire countries like El Salvador only use Bitcoin, right? So huge market out there for you guys, and very excited to see what you guys do, and hope you guys succeed.
I appreciate. Yeah, I call this, I'll say one thing, I know we've got to wrap up. I call this a bipartisan bill, because Bitcoiners like it because it's self-custody, and ETH likes it, multi-chain likes it because you got liquidity, and it's just everybody wins, and hackers lose, and that's it. So I appreciate it. Thank you for the kind words.
Perfect.
Yeah. And what I like even more is that you have not tokenized for no reason. You've actually thought about it, and your SaaS model does make more sense in this case. And kudos for not tokenizing and making it seem like a cash grab, which most projects seem to be doing these days.
Yeah, maybe it's because I'm in my mid to late 30s, and for me, it's just let's just build it, let's build it the right way, and I'm not really tempted. Oh, I mean, is it everyone's tempted? I guess we're all human, but let's just build the thing. It would be a disservice to people and to society, honestly, if we built it the wrong way. So we can only build it the right way, even if it makes it. We get passed by investors sometimes because they need a token and they want to dump it. It's like, sorry, we just don't have. In the future, we might have a token on some level if there's a governance, but I don't know. It's not in our plans. I mean, I can't say never, but the system is too straightforward to need extra pieces.
Yep. Makes a lot of sense from my perspective. No, that's the kind of critical thought we need in this space. But no, thanks so much, Aki, for joining us on this episode of Genesis Block and telling our listeners about the wonderful world of building on Bitcoin and building DLC.link. So thanks so much. And yeah, look forward to speaking to you again soon.
Thank you both.
Thanks, guys.